in the sky, gazing far into the night. I raise my hand to the fire, but it's no use, 'cause you can't stop it from shining through. It's true, baby, let the light shine through. If you believe it's true, baby, won't you let the light shine through for you, 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 won't you let the light shine through.
Most people know that I get
You're טסט, אמורים לשמוע אותי, סבבה. יאללה. He stoned $40 million and got caught. תלם $40 מיליון ונתפס, יאללה בוא נראה.
get threatened a lot on this channel. People don't like it when you expose them.
I suggest you use the money you got from pumping your Patreon to hire a good lawyer. You're gonna need it.
So scammers saying that they're gonna go after me is something that I've long been desensitized to.
CoffeeZilla. Nobody knows anything about his family because they don't have the resources I have.
But what we don't talk about a lot is that the opposite is also true. When victims of scams learn what's been done to them, the scammer very often becomes the target of a lot of personal threats. And honestly, most of them seem to take the same approach I do. You unfortunately have to ignore it. Because 99% of the time, internet threats are just that, threats, which never go beyond the screen. But this video is a reminder that every now and then, someone will take it all the way. We're talking today about Aiden Platersky, a scammer who taunted his victims with flashy cars and took their money until it was too late. And he was kidnapped, beaten, and ran.
למה אני רואה באיכות כזאת? יאללה, מה האיכות הזאת? אמור לראות באיכות יותר טובה. 390, לאט לאט עולה. אמור לראות באיכות יותר טובה.
Ransomed for $3 million, leading up to this video, which I will warn you may be disturbing.
Everything that happened is my fault. I'm not going to put the blame on anybody else. I'm not going to try to put the blame on anybody else. I feel humiliated. I feel disgusted in my actions. I feel disgusted in what I did. After 2021, I feel like a lot of it was illegal. All these guys that are owed the money, I'm going to do what I can do to make it right. I'm going to call each and every one of you individually.
What you just saw is a man who used to be called the Crypto King by Forbes.com, who took in $40 million via a Ponzi scheme and never repaid his victims. In this video, he appears to be apologizing for those actions, but now that he's free, he says he had no choice. Now, we first learned about the kidnapping back in March when Aiden Platursky's father claimed that Aiden was kidnapped. But many people, including myself, didn't really know what to make of these claims because no evidence existed besides an interview, which was filed in court. The father says that his son was taken. They basically held him for approximately 3 days, drove him around to various parts of southern Ontario, beat him, tortured him, allowed him to make specific phone calls. Approximately 2 or 3 days later, he was released with the threat that he needed to come up with some money fast. Specifically, $3 million. But this week we found out that this kidnapping was very much real, and that 5 men were arrested and charged with kidnapping, and we know that allegedly one of the kidnappers, Akil Haywood, actually knew Aiden quite well because he invested with him.
Court records show Haywood lost more than $700,000 investing with Platursky, and in another twist, he was appointed as an inspector in Platursky's bankruptcy proceedings.
That's right. One of the kidnappers was one of Platursky's victims, who presumably watched him post luxury cars and private jets to social media until he had had enough. And as one of the bankruptcy inspectors, he had access to special kinds of information about Platursky, possibly including the fact that some of the trustees thought Platursky was hiding assets.
Do you believe that he's hiding assets from you?
I have reason to believe that he is still hiding assets, yes.
So Haywood likely knew Platursky wasn't sharing everything, and likely knew other people in the case were hiding information too, like Colin Murphy, one of the fundraisers for this Ponzi scheme. In January, he wiped his phone of all the data which he was asked for, and he had a very bad explanation for why.
You wiped your phone before, knowing that they needed what was on it?
I keep super sensitive stuff on there with my girlfriend, and it's funny because this Norman Groot guy, he's saying, oh, I'm hiding this information and blah, 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 blah. And he doesn't realize that I've been keeping stuff to give to somebody. I just didn't know if he was the right person.
Ah, dang, I was about to give you guys all the evidence. I was trying to get it to you, and then I wiped my phone for no reason. Yeah, this may be one of the most transparent ways to hide evidence. Wipe it before and go, I had a girlfriend, guys. Can't hold me accountable. And my point is, these details suggest that Haywood might have believed that Platursky was hiding assets that he could get that the court simply couldn't. Although it's worth saying, I'm definitely not defending what Haywood did, kidnapping him, because not only is it completely wrong, it quickly came out that Haywood isn't some misguided vigilante for justice or something. Given what he did next, he seems about as horrible.
Haywood is also charged with threatening an official from Grant Thornton, who's overseeing the proceedings, for $2 million in cryptocurrency. The accounting firm said Haywood resigned as an inspector. Grant Thornton said, we've been cooperating with police and have maintained open lines of communication. We cannot comment any further as this is an active investigation.
Wow, you heard that right. Not only did Haywood threaten the scammer, he threatened the bankruptcy lawyers in the case and wanted a bunch of money from them, which is really playing both sides in a creative way, I've got to say. And my point is, look, it's not like he was looking for the amount he was owed, which is allegedly $740,000. He was looking for millions of dollars as a payday. So no one in this situation is particularly great. And of course, since then, him and his co-conspirators now face kidnapping charges. But what I do find very confusing is that all of the crimes being passed around here like a game of hot potato, the one person not being criminally charged in this situation is Aiden Platursky himself, the original scammer in this whole situation that started this all. He lied to all those people, said he was this great cryptocurrency forex trader, allegedly stole tens of millions of dollars, spent most of it on cars, private jets, and expensive houses, and he's not being charged? Like, I'm so surprised by this. This case is very reminiscent of another story that we've just recently did with Ted Safranco, who promised these amazing forex trades but just ran a big Ponzi instead. And not only am I surprised by the size of these Ponzi schemes and that Platursky did something very similar, he invested only 2% of the $40 million he took in, but I'm also surprised by how blatant of a fraud this is. And incidentally, the similarities don't stop there with our last story. Remember, Ted Safranco claimed he was also attacked by would-be creditors. And so this pattern of crypto or forex scammers isn't going away anytime soon, nor are the legions of upset victims who are pissed both that they got robbed and that most of these people face little to any criminal charges. And so it's easy to see why they're frustrated, although I have to say that I disagree with the method. Kidnapping someone who scammed you and ransoming them for money in some kind of scammer Uno reverse card is not a good idea. And getting an apology from them when you've beaten them up isn't doing anyone a service. So for ethical reasons, human reasons, and stay out of jail reasons, maybe don't do this.
קיצר, עשה סכם, אחי, נתן לו $40 מיליון.
Just go to the moon. Yeah, there'll be a day when AI takes over and it'll make us their pets. Whatever God is not luck. Hi, I'm Neil deGrasse Tyson, your personal astrophysicist, and I'm here at Penguin, UK.
Other species.
אוקיי, בואו נראה מה
Whoa. Tim Kennedy is a firm believer in the theory that Adolf Hitler escaped Germany after World War II and lived in South America. Although that is a popular theory, it doesn't compare to probably the most popular conspiracy theory, the moon landing was faked. Now, this isn't just a regular "we never went to the moon" theory. This conspiracy theory is that Stanley Kubrick, the director of The Shining, may have had something to do with the faking of the moon landing. Joe Rogan points out that room 237 in The Shining is the number of miles from Earth to the moon, 237,000. Joe Rogan also points out that that number is constantly changing. But then Joe starts to theorize about is time travel. Like on Joe Rogan Experience number 1821, Joe Rogan, Bert Kreischer, and Tony Hinchcliffe discuss different theories on time travel. Joe starts off by telling Terrence McKinnon's theory on time travel.
One day someone's going to invent a time machine, and that when they invent a time machine, all time ceases to become linear. So you think if you have a time machine, well, I'll just go back to the time where they were making the pyramids and I'll watch them do it. That's not what it works like. What he was saying, you can't travel where there are no roads. So once a road gets built, then you can travel. So once a time machine gets invented, then anyone from the invention of the time machine forward to forever can come back to that moment and can go to any point in time from that moment to the end of time. So all time ceases to be linear.
Joe Rogan explains that there will be no tomorrow or the next day and so on. Everything will happen everywhere all at once. People can travel back and forth through time, and there will be no ownership of anything because people will be able to go back in time and take it from you. He says that as time travel becomes more sophisticated, you will be able to travel back and forth through time as you are talking to people, and if you say something you didn't like in a conversation, you can just go back and rewind and start the conversation over again.
Everything happens everywhere all at once. So people can travel back and forth through time. You can never own anything because someone could just travel through time and take it away from you when you weren't looking. Like as time travel gets more and more sophisticated, you can go back and forth in time while you're talking to people. You know, if you don't like what you said, you could rewind and start all over again. If you're in an argument with your wife, you can go to the library and get information and come back and go, actually, you know, Herodotus once said, and then bam, your wife thinks you're the smartest guy in the world. Like this, but there would be no normal life anymore. It would the world itself would be completely unrecognizable because time would mean nothing. You'd be able to travel back and forth through time.
Bert Kreischer then asks, probably the most asked question in the world, if you could travel back into time, what would you see? Instead of answering the question, Joe Rogan says that is a very theatrical time travel. But the real time travel wouldn't allow you to travel to a time before the time machine was created.
Here we are, it's May of 2022. If time travel is invented in June, we're not going back to April. You can't go back to April.
Okay.
But you can go from June to 1,000,000 years in the future and see what people look like. You'll be able to do that. But they'll be able to come back too, and everything's going to be happening everywhere all at once. There's not going to be any sort of structure to life. There's not going to be anything in terms of money, possessions. As long as you could freely time travel, there will be no time.
Joe Rogan also points out that simultaneously you will become immortal because you can time travel to the future, and the technology will be so advanced that the future will probably have something to make sure that you don't die. But then that raises the question, what will be the future
זה מטומטם. בעתיד ימציאו... לא אותך. זה גם אני רוצה לעשות תכף.
if time travel exists? Because how can things get invented if people can just travel to the future where somebody already invented something? Will there even be new inventions after time travel? Another popular conspiracy theory is about 9/11 and how some people believe that the US government actually played a part in the attacks.
That they not only knew that those planes are going to hit the towers, but that they planned for it.
And they planned
and they
the
allowed it to
counterattack.
happen. That's the scariest of all the conspiracy theories. And I'm not saying that that's what happened. I think much more likely there's a lot of things that happened that were incompetence. I think getting that many people to keep their mouth shut about a plan where planes are going to slam into the World Trade Center, boy, that seems sketchy. That seems like people would come out. But I think one thing they absolutely do is when shit goes down, they take advantage of it.
In this episode, they point out that in 2001, there was no social media and it was all just news. The news stations had so much power over the population, and you couldn't really question anything without people thinking that you were crazy. Nowadays, it's not uncommon to question things due to social media and people purposely taking things out of context to fit their narrative.
The thing about Tower 1 and Tower 2 specifically is that it didn't fall like a controlled demolition at all. They fell like a building that was collapsing. But Tower 7 fell like a building into its base. That one's extraordinary. And that one absolutely looks like a controlled demolition. I am not saying it's a controlled demolition. No. What I am saying is the way it collapsed, it went into its base just like a controlled demolition. And if you don't agree with that, then you're talking nonsense. If you
נדבר על זה בעצם שמגדלי התאומים, ששתיים מהם נפלו כאילו מטוס נכנס בהם, אבל אחד מהם נפל כאילו השתילו לו פצצה. אז זאת אומרת, בוא נעשה את זה ככה. נגיד, אם זה בניין, מגיע מטוס, אז הבניין אמור פרק ככה, אבל הבניין זה בניין 1 ו-2. אבל בניין 7 בעצם התקיים ככה, ובעצם התפרק פה פיצוץ, פעם, ופשוט נפל למטה בצורה הזאת. זה פה שהוא שלם, היה פיצוץ, התחיל להתפרק, נפל עד שנהיה אפר לגמרי.
you don't agree with the fact that that looks like a controlled demolition, then we really can't talk because you're dealing in fantasy world.
Or
because it undeniably looks exactly like a controlled demolition.
Now, Joe Rogan's not saying that it was a controlled demolition, but that is just what it looked like. Joe Rogan explains how there was a structural collapse and the top of Tower 7 caves in before the rest of the building collapses.
That's it. So that's that thing. See that? Okay, there it goes. So that collapses. So there's obviously the internal structure's gone. So this thing collapsing like that doesn't throw me off as much, having seen that. Because I don't know jack shit about construction.
Who does?
But I do know that construction companies are shady as fuck upon occasion.
Anyways, these have been 7 of the craziest conspiracy theories ever shared on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. If you guys enjoyed, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe, post notifications.
Alright. בוא נראה אם יש עוד משהו. לעשות אבל... נעשה טירליסטים. אנימה בוי טירליסט 600 קרקטר. כן, אבל באיזה הקשר נעשה טירליסט? נעשה את ה-NBA גולדס או אבטר? בוא נראה מי ברשימה פה. אין פה הרבה ברשימה. אוקיי, בוא נעשה את זה. אתה יודע, אסתר ונר קרנקטר. בוא נראה, מבחינת דמויות. בוא נראה מבחינת דמויות. בוא נראה. אנג, הכוכב של הסדרה. שים אותו ב-S. אפה. לא מדבר יותר מדי, לא מתנהג כמו מוניות. את הפרק אבל של כשפי החוד, שהוא סבל וזה. אפשר להגיד שהוא גוט. איך קוראים לה? אחות של צוקו. אחות של צוקו, דמות שהיא אס, גם. היא נבלית טובה. זה מי זה? זה דוד של... זה אח של אבא של סוכה, ואיך קוראים לו? זה אבא של סוכה, זה נראה לי אח שלו. ראו אותו ממש לכמה שניות בסדרה. ראו אותו לכמה שניות. אז הדמות משנה הזאת עם הכרוב. לא, נכון? אותו בסדר. או... זאת הדמות הנדירה. פיו פיו. הוא יורא את החרא הזה מהמצח. לא, הוא הופיע בכמה פרקים בודדים. שים אותו, הוא היה מסתורי. שים אותו פה בבי. זה כשפי החול. המניאקים. לא ראיתי אותם יותר מדי. שים אותו פה. דמות ראשית בסי. זה המנטור של לאנג. שים אותו בבי. אבא של סוקה, על זה שנטשת אותו. נשים אותך ב... הוא לוחם, הוא יצא לקרב. שים אותו בו בי באמצע. וואי, הכשפית דם הראשונה. דמות מאוד מאוד טובה. שים אותה לפני אבא אפילו. זה, אני אפילו לא זוכר אותו. כאילו, אני זוכר אותו, אבל לא מספיק. מה? דוד של צוקו. דוד. לא, בוא נשים אותו בבי ראשון. מתאים לו בי ראשון. וואי, זה מי זה? קר לי רצח. הוא היה כשף אש אם אני לא טועה, נכון? אני לא מספיק זוכר אותו. זה איך קוראים לו? ג'ק, לא? איך קוראים לו? ג'ק? תשמע, מבחינת דמות בסדרה לא סבלתי אותו, לא יודע למה, הוא לא בא לי טוב בעין. בהתחלה היה טוב, ואז הוא שינה את ההתנהגות שלו או משהו. בוא נשים אותו. פאק איט. סיר ראשון. וואי, זאתי ממש מוכרת לי. זאת המוכרת תה הזאת, נכון? שצוקו ודוד של צוקו באו לבוסינגסה, והוא אוהב לשתות אצלה תה, נכון? שים אותה סי פה בגלל שהיא חמודה. שים אותה פה. האיש מריחה נעליים. שים אותה פה לפני הדוד שלו. קטרה, נשים אותה ב-A לפני אבא. לפי דעתי, מבחינת דמות, כן, היא יותר חשובה ממנה, אבל מבחינת דמות משחק, ומה שהיא נתנה, כאילו, היא דמות ממש טובה. איך קוראים לו? וואי, פחתי השם שלו. שים אותו בבי, מגיע לו. זה אבא של, איך קוראים לה? היה כפות הרגליים. כפות הרגליים. חברה של איך קוראים לה? לא זוכר אותו. לא מספיק זוכר אותו. זאת חברה של צוקו. חברה של צוקו. וואי, ברחתי השם שלו. זה אפה. זה... איך קוראים לו? לא יודע, אבל אתה הכי לא חשוב בסדרה הזאת. זה אבא של צוקו, לא? רגע, בטוח זה אבא של צוקו? כן, זה אבא של צוקו. שים אותך ב-S, וואלה, אתה אגדי, אחי. שים אותך ב-S האחרון בינתיים, וואלה, אתה אגדי. לא ראו אותו יותר מדי, הוא רשע טוב. רשע יעני בקטע של משחק בסדרה, כאילו, קטלני. רואים אותו בסוף ממש של הסדרה, בהתחלה לא חשפו את הפנים שלו אפילו. אפילו לא חשפו את הפנים שלו בהתחלה, הוא היה מסתורי, הוא היה רשע, היו עליו סיפורים, שמועות, ובסוף הוא הפציץ. זה דוד של קטרה, לא? או סבא שלה, לא זוכר. לא כל כך זוכר אותך. אני זוכר אותו, נראה לי הוא חבר צוות שלו. לא יודע, לא זוכר את הסיפור. אבל אתה רוקו, נראה לי קוראים לו רוקו. שים אותך פה ב-C. שים אותך ב-C. C הכי למעלה. יא אחי, אתה לא חשוב מספיק. זה איך קוראים לו? אח של קטרה. וואי, הרגע אמרתי את השם שלו, שכחתי. ברח לי השם שלו. רגע. אמרתי מקודם שזאתי חברה שלו, לא, זאתי האבטרית. זאתי האבטרית. זאתי סוכי נראה לי חברה שלו. אוקיי. בסדר, מגיע למקום. לא, אתה יודע מה? וואלה, חזרתי הרצח, מגיע לפה. נעלה אותה לפה. את אח של קטרה, שכחתי את השם שלו. שים אותו. שים אותו פה ביחד עם אחותו. זה נראה לי גם היה אבטר, לא בדיוק זוכר, אבל מה איתו? מבחינת דמות, כן, שים אותה פה אפילו. שים אותה פה, לא זוכר אותו. זה היה בטורניר של בסינגסה, לא בסינגסה, נגד הופ, הוא היה. שים אותו פה. גם הוא נראה לי, אבל לא זוכר כל כך. הופ. וואלה, הופ. עברה דרך בסדרה. שים אותה פה. זאתי חברה של זאתי. נכון? השטותניקית הזאת. נשים אותה פה רבי. זאתי אימא של צוקו. שים אותה פה. וואי, אין שוב. הוא דמות טובה, נשים אותו פה. האחראי על הספרייה. זה הווריאן שההורים שלו פסחרו. נכון, הוא גם היה בטורניר שלהם. שים אותו, הוא לא פרייר, שים אותו פה. יו, לא שקר. גנרל, שכחתי איך קוראים לגנרל הזה. שים אותו פה. כן, וואלה, מתאים לו. צוקו. מתלבט, מה לשים אותו? S או A? S או A? S או A? וואלה, הוא עבר חתיכת דרך. אני אשים אותו נראה לי ב-A ראשון. הסיבה שלא שמתי אותו ב-S, בגלל שהוא רדף יותר מדי אחרי מה שאבא שלו אמר לו. הוא עבר דרך, הוא עבר חתיכת דרך, הוא עבר לצד של הטובים, לקבוצה של האנג, אבל עדיין הוא בגד גם בדוד שלו. שים אותו ב-A. יאללה, דירוג טוב. בואו נעשה לנו... היי! נעשה לנו... נראה לי שהצלחנו. טוב. הופה. קפה מוכן. קפה מוכן. אנחנו מוכנים. נראה רגע. חפש משהו לראות. משהו טוב. אוקיי, בוא נראה. אופה, נראה את זה. בוא נראה את זה. איך האקר הציל את האינטרנט. סבבה. בוא נשק אותו. בוא נשתק. איך האקר הציל את האינטרנט. סבבה, בטח תשאר תתקן. Wait a minute, get it how you live it, 10 toes in, and Okay.
Andres is running some routine software tests. At first, everything looks pretty normal, but then he spots something. This peak here is not a typical CPU load. Not a huge problem, but it's annoying. Plus, he can't make sense of it right away. Little does Andres know that this is not just some random bug. It's a cleverly hidden backdoor, one that's been planted over years by hostile forces, possibly state-sponsored hackers. Now it's set to spread globally and give the perpetrators access to millions of servers around the world. To the systems of hospitals, companies, and entire governments. A master key to the internet and everything connected to it, right in the hands of criminals. Andres doesn't know about any of this yet, but he's about to literally save the internet.
הכי טוב להתעלם. מי בכלל צריך אותי? הגוף שלך הרי מושלם. אפס תלונות. כל...
(1938). A mild summer day in China on the grounds of Unit 731. Professors, scientists, and military doctors are conducting important research here. Now the workday is coming to an end. The adults are drinking beer by the pool of the facility. Children are playing tug of war. It's a beautiful sunset. The people next door in the barracks are unaware of this. For them, there is no end to the day, no yesterday, today, or tomorrow. They don't know if it's day or night. They know only one thing. A cruel death awaits. The First World War ended nearly 10 years ago, claiming 17 million lives. Japan fought alongside the Allies. As a result of their victory, Japan's economy is now thriving. The empire, under Emperor Taisho, is a member of the League of Nations. Japan enjoys good international relations, participating in conferences on disarmament and arms control, all in the name of preserving peace. In Geneva, the seat of the League of Nations, Japan signs a historic protocol.
The high contracting parties, so far as they are not already parties to treaties prohibiting such use, accept this prohibition, agree to extend this prohibition to the use of bacteriological methods of warfare, and agree to be bound as between themselves according to the terms of this declaration.
The prohibition of these weapons is a reaction to an incident in the First World War. For the first time, German troops systematically used poison gas as chemical weapons. The result was so horrific that the 36 founding signers decided such a thing must never happen again. About 9,600 kilometers away from Switzerland, a 33-year-old military doctor in Japan reads a report on the Geneva Protocol. He is electrified and sees it as confirmation of a theory he has been nurturing for some time. Biological weapons must hold enormous potential if they are so reviled. And he comes to a conclusion quite different from that of the signatories in Geneva.
If the prospect of germ warfare created such dread, Japan must do everything in its power to create the most virulent germ weapons, as well as effective methods for destroying wartime enemies with lethal diseases.
This military doctor, named Ishishiro, will devote
רגע, שאני אבין, מה זה האמנה של ג'נבה הזאת? משהו נשק של חיידקים? ואז הגיע הבחור הזה, אישי, בן 36.
His entire life to researching methods of biological warfare. In this endeavor, he will be aided by around 20,000 employees, and an estimated 300,000 people will fall victim to Japan's bioweapons program. Ishii is regarded as very intelligent, if not even a genius. At the same time, he is described as ruthless, extremely arrogant, and ambitious. Someone who would stop at nothing to advance his career. When he pitches his idea to the military leadership, his ultra-nationalist stance becomes evident.
What if enemy states attack us with biological weapons? Then we would be helpless. And we can take advantage of new weapons technology offensively. What if we face a shortage of iron and steel during an economic crisis? We can kill two birds with one stone. Biological warfare saves money and resources while creating an invaluable killing potential.
In 1928, Ishii, likely on behalf of the army, embarks on a 2-year world tour. He aims to collect research findings
טוב, עכשיו אני שולחת לכם חוזה התחייבות להצלחה בפסיכומטרי ונתקדם. מה הכוונה התחייבות להצלחה?
On biological warfare. When he returns to Japan in 1930, the political landscape in the country has changed. Under the new emperor Hirohito, ultra-right politicians are in power. Japan's economy has been severely hit by the global economic crisis. In these circumstances, Ishii's ambitions find fertile ground. He wants to create an entirely new institution, the Institute for Epidemic Prevention. Once again, he pitches his idea to the War Ministry, claiming that other countries are secretly developing biological weapons too. That's what he supposedly discovered during his world tour. Now the War Minister himself becomes interested in Ishii's research. The government provides him with the necessary resources. They revive Japan's chemical warfare unit, a remnant from World War I. In 1932, Ishii's institute begins its work. Ishii and his team experiment with the pathogens for glanders, cholera, typhoid, gas gangrene, anthrax, and plague. Ishii is particularly interested in the latter. To him, the plague is one of the most dangerous potential bacterial weapons. During his travels, he studied the effects of the plague in Europe from the 14th to the 17th century. The institute's name conceals the second part of Ishii's research.
There are two types of bacteriological warfare research, A and B. A is assault research, and B is defense research. Vaccine research is of the B type, and this can be done in Japan. However,
Oh shit.
type research can be done abroad.
The problem with biological weapons
פתאום אחי, וואו. וואו, מדברים פה על נשק ביולוגי, אני נזכר על שנת 2020.
is that pathogens don't distinguish between friend and foe. An out-of-control epidemic would endanger millions of people in Tokyo. And Ishii is convinced to develop the perfect biological weapon, a bit of lab research is not enough. He wants to test his developments on a large scale, regularly, extensively, on human subjects. The political climate is perfect for Ishii's plans. Japan's new military leaders want to expand. They are more aggressive than their predecessors. Some of them aim to occupy Manchuria. The Chinese region is militarily weak and rich in resources. In 1931, Japan makes a move and actually occupies the region. A year later, they established a puppet state of Manchukuo. The invasion of Manchuria is considered Japan's most decisive early step on the road toward totalitarian fascism and war. In Ishii's eyes, the now Japanese colony is perfect for his work. Potential accidents wouldn't endanger the Japanese population. Vast, sparsely populated areas guarantee secrecy. And then there are the inhabitants themselves, human subjects for his experiments. Ideal conditions for A-type investigations into biological assault. Thus, Ishii requests the relocation of his institute to Manchuria. In order to tell this story in depth, we pored over books, analyzed documents, and created detailed animations, all to make a tough topic such as this one accessible. If you like our work and our channel, chances are you enjoy learning about new things. And if you do, you will love the app Imprint. Imprint is a brand new way for people to learning experience. In Beijing, he builds the world's first bio-war death camp. Zongma Fortress is a combination of research laboratory and prison camp. It doesn't take much to be sent there by the Japanese colonial power. Soon the prison cells are filled with bandits, guerrilla fighters, partisans, communists, dissidents, and intellectuals. Suspicion that a person might be anti-Japanese minded is enough. They become part of the A-type research, human experiments with biological weapons. How many prisoners were killed is unknown to this day. The average life expectancy of the prisoners is about 1 month. Japan tries to keep the activities at the fortress strictly secret. In Tokyo, the government knows exactly about what's happening in the complex. None of the high-ranking politicians speak out against the killings, or as the scientists there call it, sacrificing human beings. But before Ishii and his team can really get going, the Beijing fortress becomes a security risk. A group of prisoners manages to escape. An ammunition depot is blown up, probably by a group of communist resistance fighters. The project could be exposed. Ishii orders the fortress to be destroyed to cover up any possible traces. He presses the Japanese government. The new site for his research should be even bigger, even more remote. No one should be able to escape. In 1936, Emperor Hirohito personally issues a decree. Ishii's institute is to expand. It becomes part of the Kwantung Army, creating a large network of locations. The headquarters are built in Pingfang. The unit stationed there is given the number 731, a code name that will go down in history. Pingfang is in a remote area, but still near the South Manchurian railway line. The new tracks leading to Pingfang officially don't exist. The secret trains that run there have a single purpose: transporting supplies, human ones included. About 150 buildings are erected over 6 square kilometers. A power plant, administrative offices, prisons, stables, greenhouses, autopsy rooms. There's even an airfield for the unit's air fleet. Trenches line the perimeter of the zone. Electric fences and watchtowers secure the area. The airspace above is a no-fly zone. Ishii runs the headquarters. He's in charge of 3,500 employees. He has recruited many of Japan's best medical researchers. They are all focused on one question: how can plague, cholera, anthrax, and so many more diseases be weaponized for war? As staff bring in a middle-aged prisoner to a room, he's quiet. He knows it's over for him. He's stripped naked and tied to the bed. But when the medical assistant picks up a scalpel, the prisoner finally starts screaming.
I cut him open from his chest to his stomach, and he screamed terribly. His face twisted in agony. The sound was unimaginable. He screamed so horribly. But finally, he stopped. This was just another day for the surgeons, but it really stuck with me because it was my first time.
This Chinese prisoner has been deliberately infected with the plague and is now being dissected alive. The researchers want to see how the plague ravages his internal organs. Anesthesia isn't used as it could interfere with the results.
הם יכולים להשתמש בהרדמה, אבל הם טענו שזה יפריע לתוצאה של החיידקים שהחדירו לגוף שלו.
Between 1936
וואלה, זה סדיסטי, אחי, סדיסטי רצח.
and 1945, at least 3,000 people are murdered in experiments like this one, though the actual number is likely much higher. As the Pacific War breaks out and Japan later attacks Pearl Harbor, Unit 731 carries on undeterred. Since the unit is now officially part of the army, they receive new orders. Push the human body to extreme conditions to see how it reacts. To study frostbite, prisoners are forced to stand outside barefoot. Specific body parts are submerged in water to freeze them. Prisoners are locked in pressure chambers to test
איך קרה? איך קרה?
how much pressure the human body can withstand until their eyes pop out of their skulls. Women were forced to become pregnant to study how diseases like syphilis transmit from mother to child and how likely that child is to survive. even though a large number of babies were born in captivity in Pingfang, most likely none survived. We could go on forever. The list of unspeakable, unimaginable atrocities is so unbearably long. In the labs, there are large 2-meter tanks where human bodies float in formaldehyde, cut in half from head to toe. In other jars, body parts are stored, all neatly labeled and documented. Feet, hands, heads, organs. Next door, the bioweapon production is in full swing. Division 4 of Unit 731 produces 1 ton of cholera bacteria, 500 kilograms of anthrax, and 700 kilograms of typhus bacteria per month. They develop bioweapon bombs and test them in the field. On a test site, prisoners are tied to stakes and bombarded with test weapons. Planes spray parts of occupied zones with bacterial cultures, and bombs filled with infected fleas are dropped on areas. The unit wants to know how many people will die. Troops contaminate wells and water sources with cholera and typhus. At its peak, the unit's bacterial production could...
בעצם ייצור של נשק ביולוגי, בעצם ניסוי ביפן בשנות, בוא נגיד בשנים של מלחמת העולם השנייה והראשונה.
wipe out the entire world's population multiple times over. After long years of war, World War II is finally drawing to a close. The Allies control most of the Pacific. Japan's major allies, Italy and Germany, have long since surrendered. Japan is the only Axis power still fighting. On August 6 and on August 9, 1945, the US drops atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, pushing Japan towards surrender. Now, something stirs in Pingfang. In a panic, Unit 731 scrambles to destroy all evidence of their crimes. Their research can't be allowed to fall into Soviet hands. They gas the remaining prisoners and shoot the forced laborers. The remains of bodies
למה לא השתמשו בנשק? נראה לי אמרו פאק, הלך עלינו, אנחנו צריכים להשמיד
were thrown into a nearby river. On August 10, 1945, 5 days before Japan's surrender, the unit blows up all its buildings. Infected test animals are released into the wild, causing major epidemics in the region. Around 30,000 people die as a result. Ishii takes the most crucial records with him. He and other senior officials fly back to Japan in comfort. The rest of the staff travels in 15 freight trains, then disappears. They leave behind 2 million biological weapons in Manchuria. Similar scenes play out at other sites of Ishii's institute. Overall, at least 580,000 people die due to Japan's bioweapons research.
What the fuck?
Fearing he might be charged as a war criminal, Ishii stages a large fake funeral for himself in 1945 in his hometown of Chiyoda. But the ruse fails. In February 1946, he is found by the US Army. The Americans already know about Japan's bioweapons research center. The Cold War is already looming. They too have experimented with bioweapons during World War II, and they are after the Japanese data.
Such information could not be obtained in our own laboratories because of scruples attached to human experimentation.
Like the Japanese, they think this data must not fall into Soviet hands. The Japanese bioweapons researchers see an opportunity to escape punishment for their crimes. The meetings and interviews between the US and Ishii's group are well documented.
If you grant me immunity for myself, my superiors, and my subordinates, I can give you all the information. In preparing for war with Russia, I offer you the advantage of my 20 years of research and experience.
The details of the negotiations remain disputed. What is clear is that the information is deemed by the US to be
of such importance to national security as to far outweigh the value accruing from war crimes prosecution.
They strike a deal. None of the senior bioweapons researchers, including Ishii, ever faces trial. While Nazi doctors are tried as war criminals at Nuremberg, most of the Japanese involved live out their lives free from prosecution. The Soviet army captures 12 members of Unit 731 and puts them on trial in Khabarovsk in late 1949. They confess to dropping bombs filled with plague-infected fleas on
איך הם מכריעים על כל כך הרבה מוות של אנשים, הם יוצאים מזה יעני בעסקה בנקי.
civilians. They speak of inhumane experiments on humans. The West dismisses all of it as a communist show trial. After short prison sentences, they are released. They too used the research data to secure leniency. By 1956, the convicted were free and returned to Japan. Many of the leading bioweapons researchers lived quietly in Japan in the following decades. The war criminals who have dissected living bodies rose to positions of power. The governor of Tokyo, the head of Japan's biggest pharmaceutical company, the president of the Japan Medical Association, and other major offices. There's overwhelming evidence that the Japanese government knew about the atrocities. Yet, it wasn't until August 2002 that the Tokyo District Court finally ruled that Japan had engaged in biological warfare.
Its main purpose was to research, develop, and produce biological weapons. In order to do this, prisoners from the Chinese resistance forces were used as the subjects for experiments.
But no compensation was awarded. In 2018, the Japanese National Archives released a list of the 3,607 members of Unit 731. Ishii didn't live to see it. He died of throat cancer in 1959. Before his death, he regularly attended reunions of his former unit. Almost every year, former members gather. Some still deny to this day that they ever participated in human experiments.
אשכרה. אמיתי לגמרי. וואלה, זה גורם לי לחשוב על המגפה של 2020, אם זה היה נשק באמת ביולוגי או שזה... מה זה היה בכלל? דקה אני בא. Holy shit. Oh. הוא הלך לג'ו רוגן, ואחר כך הרג 38. הוא הרג מישהו אחרי 38 ימים, אוקיי. אחרי שהופיע
On the 1st of February 2024, Sheldon Johnson appeared on the Joe Rogan Experience. 38 days later, he was arrested and charged with murder. It was episode 2096, with Joe Rogan, Sheldon Johnson, and another person named Josh Dubin. Josh had been on the podcast 6 different times before, explaining on an earlier episode that he was a lawyer who worked with wrongfully convicted felons.
We're here to get the word out about wrongful convictions.
In 3 out of 6 of Josh's appearances, he'd bring these wrongful convicts to tell their story.
He spent 3 decades in jail for murders that he didn't commit.
So when Josh brought in Sheldon Johnson, it seemed this would be another positive episode, but it quickly became apparent that Sheldon was slightly different.
רגע. הוא היה כאילו בכלא, והבחור הזה, שמזכה אנשים בכלא שמורשעו לשווא, הגיע לג'ו רוגן.
So when Josh brought in Sheldon Johnson, it seemed this would be another positive episode, but it quickly became apparent that Sheldon was slightly different.
I figured we'd do something a little bit different. Typically, the person sitting to my right is someone that was wrongfully convicted. Sheldon is guilty.
Sheldon had only just been released from a 25-year prison stint, but Josh had brought him on specifically as an example of someone who'd been given an unfair amount of time, believing Sheldon never deserved his 25 years in prison. Well, you can be the judge of that. Born 1975, Sheldon Johnson grew up in the Martin Luther King Jr. Towers, aka a poverty-stricken housing project in Harlem, New York City. His entire family tree had been in and out of prisons.
My father was incarcerated. He did about 15 years. I was incarcerated. My grandfather was incarcerated. My great-grandfather was a slave. And my son killed somebody when he was 12 years old.
While Sheldon was
was a slave, and I was incarcerated. My grandfather was incarcerated. My great-grandfather was a slave. And my son killed somebody when he was 12 years old.
While Sheldon was the only one in his family who had functional hearing.
My mother's deaf, my father's deaf, my sister's deaf, my aunt is deaf. I grew up in a deaf household.
Therefore, his father, a drug dealer, brought Sheldon along to help him translate deals, and by the age of 12, Sheldon had joined the exact same line of work.
I started selling drugs. Guy offered me an opportunity to be a lookout, and I would just stand there, and eventually I just slowly moved up the ranks. It turned me into this person that I was never meant to be.
As a result, he began to rack up charges.
Driving without a license, standing on the corner, little small petty drug cases.
And spent most of his teens in the Rikers Island prison, although it'd be after his release at the age of 21 that things went downhill badly. He'd commit 2 different armed robberies, receiving a sentence of 50 years in prison, which Josh argued was incredibly unfair, given only one person received minor injuries.
He got hit in the head with the gun right here on the side of his head, and he had 2 stitches, and they gave me 25 years for that case.
Did you hit him in the head?
No.
Regardless, prison is where Sheldon realized he had to turn his life around.
It was at that moment I really said I have to change my life. I just can't do this.
Beginning a prison journal about hope, change, and reform. In his entry letter to my younger self, it explained just because you're surrounded by violence does not mean that violence is the way to solve your problems. Sheldon, 2 wrongs do not make a right. Violence only begets violence. Learn how to respond and not react. In a different entry he'd state, as we know, I'm currently in prison, which I've learned does one of 2 significant things to its occupants. Brings the best out of them or the worst.
I saw individuals who were at their worst, and I saw guys who were at their best. The guys who were at their best were guys who were involved in education, post-secondary education programs.
Realizing the role model prisoners were those with an education, Sheldon spent years educating himself.
I got into school, I got my GED, and then I went on to obtain my bachelor's in behavioral science from Mercy. I stopped smoking weed, I stopped smoking cigarettes. I started working in the law library. I discovered that I had a knack for complicated things, case law, and I was actually helping guys get out of prison.
He'd further add to his journal, I have grown dramatically in these 14 years, when I could have easily withered away. I've learned that I love Shakespeare, that I love acting, that I love writing, that I enjoy reading philosophy, that I love reading criminal law, that I love writing legalese. Sheldon had changed his life to such an extent, BuzzFeed advocated for his release back in 2016. He became a model inmate, said David Roth, a prison social worker. His days were so full that he went to bed exhausted and fell asleep immediately. As a result of his good behavior, Sheldon was released after 25 years of his 50-year sentence, appearing on a podcast called Success After Lockdown, on which he'd implied that he'd never go back to prison.
I'm reflecting, I'm saying to myself like, yo, I can't spend the next 50 years like this.
When he'd appear on Joe Rogan 1 month later, Sheldon again implied that he wouldn't go back to jail.
Individuals who have been shown to acquire associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees are like 92% less likely to return back to prison.
With Josh using
individuals who have been shown to acquire associate's degrees and bachelor's degrees are like 92% less likely to return back to prison.
With Josh using
אז הוא אומר בעצם, חבר'ה שמוצאים תואר, שהיו בכלא, הסיכונים שהם יחזרו לכלא, 92%.
Sheldon as an example, that change was always possible.
How do you make change happen? He's living it and making it happen. Look at this beautiful mind and how he articulates himself.
He began working for the Queen's Defenders, helping troubled youth.
I'm trying to catch these kids before they fall, and I want to show them the way.
And even began to consider more formal education.
Sheldon asked me, should I go to law school before we came here?
In the process, expressing his disbelief that he'd turned his life around.
I just came from the bowels of hell. 25 years in prison, and now I'm in the sky above the clouds in the heavens, headed to a destination to talk about change and to talk about all of the things that brought me to this place today.
Joe Rogan even posted a clip titled, Sentenced to 50 years, Sheldon Johnson decided to turn his life around. However, Sheldon would make one final important claim.
But this is how fast your life can change from just one simple mistake.
The cryptocurrency market offers unlimited opportunities, but for beginners and even experienced...
This became reality only 38 days later.
He claimed that he had turned his life around after spending most of his adult life in prison. In fact, last year, he started working for the Queen's Public Defender's Office. Well, now he is accused of killing a man and then...
וואו. הוא התחיל לעבוד... בוא נגיד, אצל כאילו בשביל המדינה, כן? הוא התחיל לעבוד בשביל המדינה, בשביל הסנגוריה של הסנגוריה. פאק איט. וואי, שכחתי איך קוראים לזה. הוא התחיל לעבוד בשביל המדינה, ואחר כך האשימו אותו
dismembering his body.
Sheldon was childhood friends with a man named Colin Small, with whom he'd also spent over 10 years in prison. Therefore, upon Sheldon's release, Small was helping Johnson get back on his feet. However, at some point, their friendship took a turn. On the 6th of March 2024, police received a call from a tenant who lived in New York, claiming to have heard 2 gunshots from Colin Small's apartment, as well as a voice begging, "Please don't, I have a family." Police drove over to the flat and knocked on the door, only to find Sheldon Johnson inside, who claimed that Colin Small had apparently gone upstate. Well, police searched the apartment and found half of Colin Small's body, finding the other half back at Sheldon's apartment, in addition to concrete and a Tyvek suit. CCTV outside Colin's apartment showed Sheldon Johnson entering and exiting, trying to conceal his identity with a range of different disguises. In one of these stills, he's seen wearing the exact same jacket as he was in a photo he took for the Queen.
Yo,
defenders. Sheldon was therefore arrested and charged with Colin's murder, screaming "I'm innocent" as he was placed into the cop car. Sheldon maintained this innocence all the way to court.
Yesterday, Sheldon Johnson pleaded not guilty to the charges. He had quite a few supporters inside the courtroom.
As the comments on his episode changed overnight. Imagine being locked up for being wronged by the system for over 25 years, only to prove that the system was right. Amazing. The judge who gave him 50 years must feel pretty smart right now. I really believed I was gonna die in prison. Well, you're not wrong, buddy. Sheldon's own father stated, "I'm surprised my son was arrested. I was shocked. He learned and studied in prison for 26 years. He is a good man. He was doing work in a law office. There were no problems, but I doubt nobody was as shocked as Josh Dubin." He ended Sheldon Johnson's episode stating,
"I'm very thoughtful in who I bring on. I think this was one of the best ones yet."
But is still yet to talk publicly since Sheldon's new allegations. Joe, on the other hand, talked about it recently.
He was guilty before, and we knew he was guilty, but he got 50 years.
Right.
And then he was talking about how he turned his life around this, like, a month after he was on the podcast.
Yeah.
Cut some dude's head off. Homie didn't understand new HD security cameras.
Theorizing that prison had only made him worse.
Was that because he spent 25 fucking years in jail, which is an insane amount of time to be locked up in a prison and then expect to act.
אלק הוא אומר לו, יצאת מהכלא אז אחרי 25 שנה, הוא לא מבין שיש מצלמות ברחוב, מצלמות HD.
Wonder if I'm safe to explore in there.
כאן מגיע אליו אבל.
Revelio.
Handy resource indeed, your field guide. I'm most pleased to be included.
Expelliarmus! Incendio! Accio! Protego!
Always said that travel broadens the mind.
מצב שאני הולך את כל זה. אני לא הולך את כל זה. למה אין לי פה? זו יום השאלת, אי אפשר להגיע. כמה פורה.
Hello again, Mr. Moon.
Oh, I was hoping to see you again, my young friend. Gladwin Moon, Hogwarts caretaker, at your service. First, please allow me to apologize if I seemed a bit unsteady when we last met. I'm afraid I had a rather disconcerting encounter. Although I hear your visit to Hogsmeade was even more eventful than mine.
I suppose you could call it...
Oh, of course not. From what In fact, my recent visit to Hogsmeade is the reason I was hoping to bump into you. I could use your help with something. Do you see that curious statue over there? Watch what happens when that light changes from day to night. Now, if you wouldn't mind humouring me for a moment, see if you can remove the moon from the statue. Go on, take the moon. Oh, odd little contraptions, aren't they? It seems the statue vanishes once the moon is removed, which, incidentally, can only be done at night. Why don't you hold on to that one for now, and I'll explain more as we walk. Ever since that fateful day in the village, those curious statues have begun appearing about the castle. A fair number have been strewn around Hogsmeade. Someone, it seems, is trying to torment me. You see, that day in Hogsmeade, I turned a corner and came face to face with a boggart, or shapeshifter, if you will, which takes the form of whatever scares you most. This one took the form of a demiguise.
A demiguise?
Yes! Terrifying creature that can see the future. Wholly unnerving. I encountered one when I was a lad in Korea. Terrible experience. Those statues are demiguises. The moons, I assume, are an uninspired play on my name. Some jackanapes used a boggart to learn my greatest fear and use it against me. I have my suspicion as to the scoundrel or scoundrels responsible. It is my hope that they will slip up and reveal themselves as the statues disappear. That is why I need your help in removing the statues.
Why me?
A couple of reasons, frankly. First, your daring do against those trolls in Hogsmeade has gained you a reputation for fearlessness. Second, as macabre and hideous as a demiguise is, most would find my fear of them unwarranted. You, however, have seen how they affect me. I'm at my wit's end, young friend. I simply can't bring myself to go... In fact, I know of 2 statues right here in the faculty tower. Perhaps you could start simply by removing them, so I can go about my evening duties.
Why would I do this? Seems all risk and no reward.
Oh, rest assured, there's very little risk and there is in fact a reward. I will teach you a particularly useful spell. First, you know how to cast a disillusionment charm, correct? You'll want to do that before wandering the tower at night. Next, you'll notice that the door is locked. However will you get in? Alahomora, that's how.
But what about curfew?
Curfew? Oh, tosh! I sense you're a bit like me when I was your age. Oh, the school was my oyster. And I took advantage of it. Oh, everyone loved me for it. Oh, those were the days. Now, you'll find one statue in the prefect's bathroom and the other in the hospital wing. Good luck. Oh, and thank you.
Alohomora.
Alohomora. Use Dynamite. What the fuck? Use Dynamite. Huh? Okay. Spell. Water.
Well done! You're in. Remember, use a disillusionment charm so no one claps eyes on you. This is a restricted area of the castle, after all.
How are your students getting along this year?
Rather poorly, I'd say.
Oh shit.
We're raising a generation of coddled
Tweak flappers that can scarcely tell the difference between Arcanite and Asphodel.
Yes, well, it's still early. Perhaps they'll improve.
כואב לי הגב. אני אמשיך את הלייב בערב.
I'm on my own, broken alone.